Hey guys, welcome back to another fantasy F1 video, and of course, as you can see in the title, and if you watch F1, you would know that the next race up is the Japan Grand Prix. Now, we've got a lot to talk about in F1 fantasy, but before we do that, if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Follow my Twitter, because if anything changes from these videos, I'll post it on there. Because, you know, practice, you never know who's going to be on top, especially these days. And then, of course, follow my league, join it, and hey, let's get straight into it. So, first off, let's start with the big price movements. Now, the first big price movement, of course, is Carlos Sainz. We know he had a great weekend in Singapore. He, at the minute, is a great option to have in your team also. I would steer clear of him just for now, just until Friday, purely because it looks like Red Bull are going to be on top again. So probably Perez will be the better option at Suzuka. Then the next big movement is Pierre Gasly. And now don't get me wrong, he fully deserved that big move up in price. He got 21 points in Singapore, which is amazing for that Alpine. But going into Suzuka, this track is more like a top speed track. It's not like Singapore, and Alpine did struggle at Monza. I'm not saying they'll struggle at Suzuka. I have no idea, of course. We'll have to wait and see. But especially where Alpine are in the pack, I don't see him replicating that unless people get very unlucky. And at the same time, there's people better down the line who get you more or the same points. So then the third big move of the weekend was Oscar Piastri. 1 million up. Fully deserved. He went from 17th to 7th. And in F1 fantasy terms, that is amazing, because realistically, it's actually better to not qualify 5th to 10th, qualify like 20th in a big car and just get all the overtake points. Of course, it's still better to qualify 1st, 2nd, 3rd or 4th. But yeah, great drive from Oscar Piastri. I expect McLaren not to be as good at Suzuka. I'm hoping they are, but I'll see what they're like. But they'll still be better than the Aston, and they'll still be better than the Alpine, so it's a great shout for 11 million. And then the medium price movements are as followed. We have Albon, Magnussen, Zhou, Lawson, and Sargent. Now, Sargent, I don't think it was deserved for his price to move up. He only got 6 points in Singapore, but I guess for him, that is good. Lawson, again, 8 points for a low-level driver. I guess that is enough to move up. Again, no Magnussen. His price is way too high. Don't go near him. Then Zhou, I understand, considering he got 11 points, but just be careful, because that Alfa Romeo looks very bad at the minute. And he only got that because people like Alonso had a crash, Ocon's car, Russell, Tsunoda. So just be careful when picking Zhou. And of course, Alex Albon got 12 points. I'm hoping for even more points in Suzuka, as this track will suit the Williams better. But for 9.4 million, he is definitely a driver to look out for and will definitely be in my team. He's a lot better than the alternatives. And then constructors-wise, the only one really worth looking at will be the McLarens that have gone up 1 million, because you're not going to be looking at the Williams for constructors, or basically any team below Aston Martin. And so if you aren't on McLaren, that was a shame, because they're just going to go up and up and up in price now. But let's head on to the drivers and constructors you should steer clear of for Suzuka. So the list is as followed. Steer clear of Lewis Hamilton, too expensive. Charles Leclerc, too expensive. George Russell, not good enough. Pierre Gasly, their car isn't set up for Suzuka. Same with Ocon, they are just too pricey. Lance Stroll qualified 20th in the last 2 races. He's had quite a shake to his confidence, so I'm pretty sure he is a very bad pick to have at the minute. Valtteri Bottas, too expensive. Magnussen, too expensive. Zhou, too expensive. Lawson, more expensive than Tsunoda, and I know Tsunoda's had some bad races, but it's not because of him. So definitely Tsunoda's a better option out of Lawson. And then Mercedes and Ferrari are just too expensive. You won't be able to have a good team if you pick one of those. And McLaren will get you similar points. Aston Martin, purely because Stroll is really not helping Aston Martin at the minute. And with how Aston Martin in general just don't look as good anymore, Alonso won't carry that team as much. And then Alpine, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri are worth not looking at, purely because they don't get you enough points, considering constructors are the main part of F1 fantasy. So let's have a look at the drivers you should be looking at for your teams. And the drivers are as followed. Of course, Max Verstappen, he is the #1 driver you have to have in your team. He's getting you points consistently every single race. Even when he has a bad car, he's still got 25 points in Singapore. Yet have to have him. Sergio Perez, a good second option driver. Now, I don't think he's the best option for now, and I've said this before in my other videos, purely because I think you can get up to him, but I think you should be working on getting the money to get up to him and not having to have a Logan Sargent, which hopefully will be happening next race weekend. Then you have Carlos Sainz. Now, if the Ferrari is just as fast as they've been for the last few races, he has been dominating Charles Leclerc, so he is the better option considering he's cheaper. And if Ferrari keep that pace, like I said, he is a very good option, potentially better than Perez, because Perez stinks at qualifying. Then you have Lando Norris, of course, 15.7 million is quite expensive now for a McLaren, but if McLaren keep up being in the top 5, definitely worth having in your team. Fernando Alonso, like I've said, for 13.4 million, he's still worth having in your team, purely because he had a bad race in Singapore getting -1 points, but he was quite unlucky, and also, even in the Aston Martin, he's gonna get top 10. Mark my words. So considering the drivers around his price value, he is the best option available, bar Lando Norris. Then onto Oscar Piastri. Like I said, both McLarens are great to have in your team at the minute, purely because they're so cheap and they will be getting you top 10 finishes and be around the big boys like Mercedes and Ferraris, who are valued at higher prices, and they'll get you the exact same point. Then onto Alex Albon, who is also a great pick, especially going into Suzuka. I can't say this enough. I'm pretty sure Williams will be back and running because the tracks are looking much better for them going ahead of the season. So he'll be getting you around 20 points this weekend unless he crashes. And then the only other 2 drivers worth looking at for your team will be Yuki Tsunoda and Logan Sargent, purely for Logan Sargent because he is in the Williams, and that Williams will be good around Suzuka. Now, he won't be as good as Albon. He'll probably get you a Q2, but potentially if he just stays around there, makes a few overtakes, he'll be okay. And again with Yuki, he's very good in qualifying, and if he doesn't get unlucky, he is much more worth that 5.4 million price tag. Especially as like his big rivals have now gone up to like 6 million. He is a bargain at the minute. So get on him if you want him in your team. But let's have a look at what teams you could bring to Suzuka. So for me, there are 3 teams when you're doing the usual strategy. The first team is the valuable team, which I'll be using hopefully until next race weekend. Potentially, I could have gone with another team, which is what I'll show you later on in the video, which is my 3rd team. But for now, this is the team that I'll be going with, and it's the same team I had in Singapore, unless anything comes up in practice, which is Verstappen, Piastri, Alonso, Norris, Albon, with Red Bull and McLaren as the constructors. Now, I've already said why all of these teams are great to have. So, if you want a team that's going to increase in value every race weekend and potentially get you to a point where you can bring in a Sainz over Alonso, or a Norris turns into a Sainz, and then you can keep Alonso and Albon instead of having to demote to a Sargent, that is why this team is so great for now. Now, the second team, like I said, I've always called this the Perez team, but I'm going to call it the Perez and Sainz team, and realistically, it's a very similar team, but it's got Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Piastri, Tsunoda, with Red Bull and McLaren as the constructors, and this is basically the team, and the alternative is to replace Perez with Sainz if you think Sainz will be doing a better job, which is basically up to practice to see what will happen. But realistically, this team won't be making you as much money because you ain't got Norris, you ain't got Albon, who are always going up in price, but it will do you a good job. Now, if Perez does well, it will get you more points than the other team, but over the long run, like I've said before in other videos, it won't get you as many points. But this is a very good team to go for, either with Perez or Sainz, and potentially, if you go for Sainz and you've got a bit more money, you could upgrade Tsunoda. But I think Tsunoda is the best option for a 5th driver at the minute, if you are low on cash. And then the 3rd team is a bit of a differential team, and this is purely because I don't really trust Aston Martin at the minute. Now, if Aston Martin were still doing well, I would, but Stroll is really just dropping them down. But if you want to cash out of the valuable team and move on to the better team already, this is the team I'd go for, which is Verstappen, Alonso, Sainz, Piastri, Albon, Red Bull and Aston. So by no means a bad team, but I just don't think Aston Martin are a good constructor anymore, and I think that will really hinder you. So I think this team is not worth going for now, but if you really want to cash out, by no means, if Aston Martin pick up their socks, this is a banging team. Now, I'll be updating them on Twitter if anything comes up. But yeah, those 3 will be the teams I would recommend for all of you. So let's go on to, will I be using any chips? Short answer, no. If you want to use chips, I would say definitely not Limitless, definitely not Wildcard, definitely not Extra DRS, as there hasn't been any penalties given out before the race, and because there is no sprint race weekend. Now, you could do an autopilot, you could do a no negative, because basically those ones are really, you want to use no negative when there's a lot of crashing at tracks. So Singapore actually would have been a decent one to do it on. And autopilot, I might use autopilot this weekend purely because it's not that useful, and when you've got Verstappen always 2 times in it, it's always going to happen, you know what I mean? But if you want to use autopilot, this isn't a bad weekend to do it. So let's go have a look at my league and the league standings. So for now, I am 21,252nd in the league, the global league. So I'm happy with that. I really want to break the top 20,000 by the end of the season. I'm hoping to break the top 10,000 if I can. And in my own league, I'll put the link in the description with the code if you want to join, with 113 of you at the minute. So thank you so much for all joining it. It means the world to me that you all have joined my league. And it's a really competitive league. So thank you so much. And of course, like always, I'm going to shout out the top 5. And my boy, well done to El Shemley. Well done. Good on you. You're now in first position. I hope you can hold that because it will be great to see you win. You're going to be kidding with me. You have dropped to second, but continue doing what you're doing and you can easily get back into that first place position. Third place, Leapers 1. I don't think I've seen you so far in the top 5, so congratulations for your first shout out. Rod Ben Racing, same for you. Congratulations. Very well done. And then, of course, Rivaldi HV F1 team. Hope you all do well for the next race in Suzuka. So, I think that about wraps up this fantasy video. Comment down below if you think I've missed anything. Follow my Twitter, please. I will be commenting any updates along with practice, along with qualifying, and just giving my opinions on stuff that's happening around F1. But hey, love you all lots, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.